My name is Elena Ward, and I can tell you the exact moment when my world cracked open. It happened on a warm Saturday evening in early June, inside a bright wedding hall in the American city of River Glen, but the story of how I ended up there begins much earlier, in a little blue house on the outskirts of Maple Bridge, a quiet Midwest town with more barking dogs than streetlights. That blue house had chipped paint, a porch that leaned like it was tired of holding itself up, and a front yard that smelled like damp leaves for half the year. It was the only home I had known until I was 22. My mother, Ruth Ward, was the kind of woman who never stopped moving. She worked double shifts at a grocery store, wearing a name badge and soft shoes because her feet always hurt. My stepfather, Daniel Cole, ran a small auto garage off the state highway. He fixed people's cars, changed tires, and sometimes came home with grease on his face and a headache that made him snap at everyone. He was not unkind, but he kept his kindness like money, only spending it when he had extra. I came into my mother's life before Daniel did. I was the child from the past, the one people whispered about at church gatherings or neighborhood parties. They would lower their voices and say things like, "Bless that girl, she had a rough start." My mother always told me I wasn't a mistake. She said I was her unexpected gift. But no matter how softly she said it, the word unexpected always made me feel like a wrong turn she had learned to live with. Then there was Madison, my stepsister. Madison Cole, with straight blonde hair, polished nails, and a closet full of clothes that somehow always looked new. She was 2 years older than me, and she lived life like the world owed her the best seat in every room. Her bedroom smelled like expensive perfume and hairspray. Mine smelled like old textbooks and the second-hand dresser my mother bought from a yard sale for $10. While Madison posed for pictures and dresses that cost $200, I wore shirts someone else had worn before me. Growing up with her was like growing up next to a mirror that only showed my flaws. She never said it out loud, not at first, but I knew she looked down on me. It was in the way she raised her eyebrows when my shoes were scuffed, or the way she smirked when someone asked about my father. I learned to keep my head down and my heart quiet. When I finally turned 22, I packed a single suitcase, hugged my mother, and left Maple Bridge. I moved to a small studio apartment in Harborview, a coastal American city with tall buildings and bright lights that made me feel both brave and tiny. The rent was $900 a month, which felt impossible, but I worked hard enough to make it work. I found a job at Brightline Media, a marketing company with gray carpets, loud printers, and windows that looked over the river. My salary was about $3,200 a month after taxes, enough to keep the lights on and buy groceries if I didn't spend foolishly. That office changed everything for me because of one person, Victor Hayes. Victor joined the company as our new project manager. He was the opposite of flashy. He wore the same 2 suits, his brown shoes were scuffed at the edges, and he always carried a notebook full of scribbles and half-ideas. But he had the kindest eyes I had ever seen. While other managers rushed past me with clipped voices and full schedules, Victor always asked, "How are you doing today, Elena?" And he waited, really waited for the answer. We often stayed late together during big campaigns. He brought me coffee when he knew I needed it and never forgot that I liked 2 sugars. I fixed his slides before presentations, corrected his spelling, and sometimes helped him calm down when deadlines piled up. We laughed at the vending machine that stole our dollars without giving snacks and celebrated small victories like children getting gold stars. He treated me with a respect I didn't even know I deserved. One night, after everyone else had gone home, Victor leaned against my desk with a tired smile. "Elena, this place would fall apart without you," he said. I rolled my eyes. "They'd just hire someone else for less money." "No," he said, shaking his head. "No one could replace you." I didn't know what to do with that. So I just smiled and went back to organizing files, pretending his words didn't hit a soft, hidden place inside me. Then, months later, everything changed. Victor announced he was engaged. I had no reason to think his fiancé had anything to do with me until I saw the wedding invitation. The elegant card with gold letters read, "Victor Hayes and Madison Cole." My stepsister's name, right there. I stared at the card so long that my hands started shaking.
How?
How had Victor, the one person who made me feel seen, ended up with Madison, the one person who made me feel like a shadow? My mother called me that night. Her voice was soft, almost hopeful. "Elena, please come to the wedding," she said. "It's important for the family. This wedding will change things." "Change what?" I asked. "Everything," she whispered, but she wouldn't explain.
I didn't understand then.
I couldn't. I was too stunned, too full of questions that hurt to even think about. I spent days trying to imagine Victor and Madison together, and none of the pictures in my mind made sense. Still, I knew I had to attend the wedding. Not for Madison, not for Victor, but for myself, to face whatever fate was waiting for me. That is how I found myself standing in a wedding hall in River Glen on that warm June evening, wearing a simple dark blue dress that cost $45, trying to steady my breath. I didn't know the storm that was coming. I didn't know the words Madison was about to say or the way Victor's life, and mine, would change in a single moment. I only knew that the girl who grew up unwanted in a blue house was about to step into the center of a story she never asked to be part of. And it would begin with a finger pointed at me in front of everyone. The wedding hall in River Glen looked like something from a dream I had never been invited to. It was a tall white building with glass doors and golden handles that reflected the evening light. Inside, everything shimmered: crystal chandeliers, long curtains soft as mist, white flowers set in tall vases, and round tables covered with silver plates that I knew were too heavy and too shiny for any regular home. Someone must have spent thousands of dollars decorating the hall. It smelled strongly of roses, perfume, and the faint, sugary scent of frosting from the huge wedding cake standing near the back. I stood just inside the doorway for a moment, steadying myself. My dress, dark blue and simple, felt too plain for such a rich room. I had bought it on sale for $45, telling myself I didn't need anything more because I wasn't important to the event. My $8 thrift store shoes pinched a little, but they looked good enough, and I didn't expect anyone to stare at my feet. Yet somehow, when I entered, I felt eyes on me. Not curious eyes, judging ones. I recognized a few faces from Maple Bridge, people who had known me since I was a little girl with unbrushed hair and hand-me-down clothes. They hadn't known my real story, only the one whispered by others. The girl from before, the illegitimate child, the one who didn't have a real father. They smiled at me, but their smiles were tight and cold, as though they already expected something shameful to happen. My mother came rushing toward me, pulling me into a warm hug. Her dress was light purple, and I could smell the faint lavender perfume she always wore because it reminded her of her grandmother. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," she whispered. I forced a smile. "Thanks, Mom. You look lovely, too." If I could have hidden behind her the rest of the night, I would have. But the music shifted, and the room filled with excitement as Madison walked in. My stepsister looked like she had stepped off a magazine cover. Her white dress had crystals across the bodice that sparkled every time she moved. The veil fell behind her like a soft cloud. Her blonde hair was curled perfectly, and her makeup was flawless in that careful way that takes hours and costs more than I make in a week. Around her neck was the diamond necklace Victor had bought for her, the one I had secretly helped him choose online months ago, before I even knew who he planned to marry. I remembered the price. $2,150. A number so large it almost didn't feel real. Madison barely glanced at me. The look wasn't hateful or warm. It was empty, like she didn't see a person at all, just a bit of dust on the floor. And for a second, I felt 12 years old again, standing beside her in that blue house, wearing clothes she had outgrown. People took their seats as the ceremony began. The music softened. The officiant stood at the front, smiling with all the warmth of someone who had seen too many weddings and yet never grew tired of them. Victor stood beside him in a dark suit that fit him better than anything I had seen him wear at work. His tie was neat, his hair trimmed, but he still looked like the same gentle man I had spent late nights with at Brightline Media, patient, thoughtful, a little nervous. When Madison began her walk down the aisle, everyone turned toward her. All except me. My eyes, without meaning to, settled on Victor. For a brief moment, He looked at me and gave the faintest smile, small, warm, almost comforting. It eased the tightness in my chest, even though I didn't understand why it was there. The vows started. People wiped tears. Someone's baby babbled softly in the back. A photographer kept snapping pictures, and every flash made the crystal lights sparkle brighter, and then it happened. The officiant spoke about family, about joining households, building trust, and beginning a new life with open hearts. Something in that sentence must have shifted something inside Madison, because she suddenly turned her head sharply. Her eyes locked onto me. Before I could even blink, she lifted her hand and pointed her finger straight at me. "This," she said loudly, her voice cutting through every whisper in the room, "is an illegitimate child we are raising. And she's not even ashamed." The hall froze. For one breath, 1 second, and then the laughter started. It wasn't soft laughter or confused laughter. It was sharp, cruel. The kind of laughter that fills a room like smoke and makes it hard to breathe. Some guests tried to hide it with their hands. Others didn't even bother. They looked at me with pity or disgust, as though my entire existence was a joke they had been waiting to laugh at. My stepfather stared at the floor, his jaw tight. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. I could see her eyes shining with tears. She couldn't stop. My own heart dropped so fast that my legs felt weak. I could hear my pulse in my ears, loud, like a storm. My chest felt tight. I wanted to scream, to disappear, to run out of the hall and never return to any room where these people might be. But I stood frozen, unable to move, my face burning. Madison's lips curved into a small, satisfied smirk. She believed she had said something clever, something powerful, something that would put me back in the corner where she believed I belonged. But she had no idea what would happen next. Victor's eyes fell on me. I saw confusion in them first, deep confusion, then shock, and then something else, anger. Not soft anger, sharp, bright anger. He looked from me to Madison, then back to me again. Something hardened in his face, like a door slammed shut. Before anyone could react, before even the photographer could lift his camera again, Victor took a step forward. And he slapped her. The sound cracked through the hall like thunder. The laughter stopped instantly. The entire room froze again, but this time in horror. Someone dropped a glass. Someone else gasped so loudly it echoed. Madison's had snapped to the side, her veil shifting. Her hand flew to her cheek, and she stared at him with wide, stunned eyes, as though she had never imagined anyone would dare touch her. Victor didn't shout, not at first. His voice came out low and shaking. "How dare you?" he said. "How dare you speak about her like that?" The room held its breath. I stood there silent, my cheeks still burning, but now for a different reason. No one had ever defended me that way, not in public, not in private, not ever. Victor wasn't looking at the guests. He wasn't looking at the officiant. He wasn't even looking at Madison anymore.
He was looking at me.
And in that moment, everything I thought I understood about this wedding, about Victor, about my own place in the world, began to shift like sand under my feet. Something had broken in this room. And something else, something I couldn't name yet, had just begun. When Victor's hand struck Madison's cheek, the shock rippled through the wedding hall like a broken wave. The music had stopped long ago, but now even the hum of the air conditioning felt too loud, too alive. It was as if the whole room was holding its breath, suspended in a moment none of us would forget. "How dare you?" Victor repeated, louder this time, his voice trembling with anger and disbelief. "How dare you talk about her like that?" His words sliced through the heavy silence. There was no laughter now. Not a single whisper. Just an entire room of people who suddenly felt guilty for finding humor in someone else's pain only moments earlier. Madison's hand pressed against her cheek, the spot already turning pink. Her eyes filled with outrage, then fear. "Victor," she began, but her voice cracked like brittle glass. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone except me. "Elena," he said softly, almost painfully, "I am so sorry." My throat tightened until it hurt. I shook my head because I couldn't find the strength to speak. I had lived most of my life swallowing cruel words, but hearing an apology in front of so many people felt overwhelming. I didn't know where to place my hands, my feet, or my heart. Victor turned back to Madison, and when he spoke again, his voice shifted, still firm, still clear, but controlled. "Do you know who you just insulted?" he asked her, each word steady as stone. "You insulted the woman who stayed late with me when everyone else went home. The one who fixed my mistakes. The one who never asked for anything but respect." Several of our coworkers, seated at a table near the front, shifted uncomfortably. They knew exactly what he meant. Those long nights at Brightline Media, the quiet teamwork, the exhausted laughter, the file revisions I did without complaint. "You call her illegitimate like it's her fault," Victor continued. "You laugh at her like she's beneath you. If you can do this to her in front of everyone, what will you do to others when no one is watching?" Madison's tears welled up until they spilled onto her cheeks. "Victor, you don't understand." "No," he said sharply. "I understand perfectly."
He didn't shout.
He didn't need to. His voice was heavy with disappointment, heavy enough to make Madison flinch as much as the slap had. He slid the ring from his finger, the ring he had proudly shown me the week he bought it, and pressed it into Madison's shaking hand. "This marriage will not happen," he said. "Not now. Not ever." Gasps echoed through the hall. Someone near the back dropped a champagne flute, and it shattered across the marble floor. My mother whispered my name in a trembling voice, but her words felt far away, like they were coming from the other side of a closed door. Madison grabbed Victor's arm in desperation. "Please, Victor," she cried, her voice rising in panic. "Please don't do this. I didn't mean it." "I swear I didn't." "Yes, you did," he said, pulling his arm free. "You meant exactly what you said. And now everyone here has seen who you truly are." He turned to face the guests, family, friends, co-workers, all of them frozen like they were afraid to breathe wrong. "I'm sorry to all of you," Victor said, "but I cannot marry someone who treats another human being like this, especially someone I respect." Those last words hung in the room like a verdict. Heavy, final, undeniable. Madison collapsed into tears, her sobs loud and heartbreaking in a way that might have moved me once. Mascara streaked down her face, marking trails of black across her skin. Her perfect image was falling apart just like her wedding day.
And then she looked at me.
"Elena," she sobbed, reaching out a trembling hand. "Please, I'm sorry, okay? I was angry. I didn't mean it.
Please say something.
Please fix this." A part of me, the part shaped during childhood, the part that had once admired her even when it hurt, wanted to go to her. The little girl in me wanted to wipe her tears and tell her things would be okay. But the woman I had become remembered every cut she delivered through words and silence. I remembered the years she mocked my clothes, my hair, my shoes. I remembered her whispering to friends that I was charity, that I was lucky to be allowed in her house, that I was less. I remembered her laughing when other kids repeated the rumors about me. I remembered all of it, and suddenly, I realized I was tired of feeling ashamed, tired of staying quiet, tired of cleaning up messes I didn't make. I stood up slowly from my chair. Dozens of eyes followed me. My legs were shaking so hard I thought I might fall, but my voice came out steady. "I'm done fixing things I didn't break," I said. Madison took a step toward me. "Elena, please." I stepped back. "You chose your words," I told her. "Now you can live with them." Her face crumpled, and she let out a broken sound that echoed through the room. But I couldn't comfort her. Not anymore. Not at the cost of myself. I turned to my mother and leaned down to kiss her cheek. "I love you, Mom," I whispered. "But I can't stay here." My mother's eyes were full of tears. "I understand," she said, though her voice wavered. Then I looked at Victor. He looked exhausted, sad, and angry all at once. But when our eyes met, something gentle flickered across his face. "Thank you," I said quietly, because despite the chaos, despite the pain, he had been the only one to stand up for me when it mattered. "You deserve better than this," he replied, his voice low. Maybe he meant better than the wedding. Maybe better than Madison. Maybe better than all the years I spent apologizing for simply being alive.
I didn't ask. I just walked away.
My cheap shoes tapped against the marble floor. Tap, tap, tap. Steady and sure, like a rhythm marking a new beginning. Each step felt like I was shedding an old version of myself, leaving her behind in that glittering hall filled with broken expectations and heavy silence. I pushed open the glass doors, stepping out into the warm evening air. The sunlight had softened into a golden glow, touching the parking lot and the nearby trees with a gentleness I hadn't felt inside. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like someone's burden. I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel ashamed. I felt free. And I had no idea what tomorrow would bring. But I knew one thing for certain. I would never be the same girl who walked into that wedding. I had finally walked out as someone stronger. Someone braver. Someone who refused to be less ever again. After the wedding disaster, news traveled faster than I ever imagined. River Glen, Harborview, even Little Maple Bridge, all seemed to be buzzing with the same story. Some people whispered that I had somehow stolen the wedding. Others claimed Victor had lost control. A few said Madison's temper had finally caught up with her. And some, the cruelest ones, said I must have deserved everything because of how I was born. But when I returned to my tiny studio apartment that night and shut the door behind me, the noise stopped. The laughter, the gasps, the whispers, they all stayed out in the world. Inside my own four walls, there was only the hum of my old refrigerator and the soft creak of the wooden floor every time I moved. I sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing the dark blue dress that now felt too heavy with memories, and I let the silence hold me. A week later, I opened my inbox to find an email from Victor. My heart thudded just seeing his name, but the message was short, careful, almost gentle. Elena, I resigned from Brightline. I'll be taking some time away. You did nothing wrong. Please don't forget that, Victor. I read it 3 times. Then once more. For a moment, I thought about writing back, asking why he made such a huge decision, or telling him how his anger that night had stunned the room into silence. But I didn't. Instead, I deleted the email, not out of anger, but because I needed to move forward without holding on to something that might never belong to me. The next morning, I walked into Brightline Media with my head high. I asked for more tasks, more responsibility, more chances. I stayed late, but this time, not because I wanted to prove myself to someone else. I stayed for me. I needed to rebuild my confidence piece by piece. 6 months passed. One cold afternoon in December, my boss, Caroline Brooks, called me into her office. She was a sharp woman with warm eyes, always dressed in simple black suits and silver earrings that looked expensive but never loud. Elena, she said, folding her hands on her desk, your hard work has not gone unnoticed. We're promoting you to project coordinator. Your pay will increase to $4,200 a month. I blinked at her, stunned. My eyes watered so suddenly that I had to look at the ceiling for a moment. That raise meant stability. It meant opportunity. It meant I could breathe a little easier each month. I thanked her with a shaky voice and walked back to my desk feeling lighter than air. With the new salary, I opened a savings account and promised myself I'd try to put away at least $500 every month. A year later, when I checked the balance and saw over $6,000, something inside me swelled with pride. It wasn't just money, it was proof that I was building my own life with my own strength. Then one evening, my mother called. Elena, she said, her voice heavy with worry, Madison isn't doing well. She cries a lot. She says she misses you. I closed my eyes. Mom, I said softly, I hope she learns something from all of this. I really do. But I can't go back to being the girl people laugh at. I know, she whispered. I just wanted you to know that she's beginning to understand what respect means. Maybe not perfectly, but more than before. I didn't visit, not then. I needed space to grow without falling backward into old wounds. Instead, I put my energy into a new dream. One sunny afternoon, I found a listing for a small house in a quiet part of Harborview. It had peeling white paint, cracked steps, and a tiny garden full of weeds. The price was $155,000, a number that frightened me. But the bank approved the loan, and I used my savings for the down payment. The day I received the keys, I walked into the empty living room and stood completely still. The hardwood floors were scratched, the windows were dusty, and the walls looked tired. But to me, it was perfect. This house was mine. Not Daniel's, not Madison's, not a landlord, mine. I spent weekends painting the walls a warm cream color. I bought a second-hand sofa for $120, a small wooden table for $40, and curtains for $15. I even bought a vase of bright yellow flowers for $5 and placed it right in the center of the table. It made the whole room feel warm, alive, safe. At night, I often sat by the window with a cup of tea and looked out at the streetlights. Sometimes I imagined visiting Europe, maybe Dublin, Lisbon, or Florence someday. I figured if I saved $2,500 or £2,000, I could finally take a trip that belonged only to me. Months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, Madison stood there. No diamonds, no fancy dress, just jeans, a plain sweater, and tired, red-rimmed eyes. "Elena," she said softly, "can we talk?" For a moment, I almost closed the door. But something in her voice, something small, fragile, stopped me. I stepped aside. "Come in." We sat on the sofa I bought with my own money, my own work, my own life. "Elena," she whispered, "I'm sorry.
Truly.
What I did was cruel. I thought I was above you, but I wasn't. I'm not. I was wrong." I held my teacup with both hands, warming my fingers. "Madison," I said, "I used to dream that you would say those words. I thought if you did, everything would magically be fixed." "Can it be fixed?" she asked, tears falling again. I looked around the room, the cream walls, the flowers, the quiet life I built. "It can be better," I said, "but it will never go back to what it was. If you want to be in my life now, it must be as someone who respects me, not someone who owns my story." She nodded slowly. "I understand." We didn't hug. Not that day. But she stayed for an hour, talking about small things, our mother, our town, the past. When she left, the air felt clearer. That night, as I sat on my porch steps under the soft glow of the streetlights, I thought about everything. My childhood, the wedding, the slap, the laughter, the pain. For so long, I thought my worth came from the past. But now, sitting in a home paid for by my own hands, I knew the truth. My value lives in every step I took forward, every dollar I earned, every moment I chose myself. I had once been called illegitimate in front of a room of people. But here in America, in my own house, with my own name, I finally felt legitimate in every way that mattered.